Before we begin, please be aware that this talk will discuss abuse. So if you don't have the energy for that right now, maybe this isn't the talk for you. Second, this talk isn't a standard research talk describing our methods and our results. Instead, it's a call to action to the CHI community to address a problem that we have understood to be of real importance through our research. That issue is the dangers of smart homes in perpetrating intimate partner abuse. Imagine living in a home where you can't control the lights or the heating or the locks, where all your comings and goings are monitored and where every search you do can be seen by someone else. For many people living in smart homes, if they're not the super user, this is simply the reality because of the way smart home technologies are designed. We're not arguing that everyone who's the super user of a smart home is abusive, rather that the technologies in the hands of those who do intend to abuse can be very dangerous. We're also not arguing that this type of abuse, which is known as coercive control, is new. It's existed for a really long time. However, smart home technologies make that type of abuse both much more dangerous and easier to do. To discuss exactly what the CHI community should be doing about this, we're going to have a conversation between the authors of this paper.
So Dana, why talk to the CHI community about these issues?
Because the CHI community, more than any other community, is interested in the social implications of technology, and these technologies are designed. The CHI community is best placed to understand human behavior and design the technologies to be safer in the future.
That makes sense. So what needs to happen to make these technologies safer in the future?
Well, it's going to take holistic involvement from many angles within the CHI community. So we need to involve practitioners, researchers, designers. We also need to work with other groups like health scholars who focus on abuse, privacy researchers and scholars, and law experts who can help us to make the policy changes needed to force these technologies to be safer.
That makes sense. So it's a holistic sort of thing. So what can researchers do in all this?
So researchers need to be investigating the ways in which these technologies can be used abusively, or the ways in which they might inadvertently promote abuse. We need to understand both the perpetrator and the victim survivor perspective of it as well. And the other thing is, we need to be alert to the dynamics of abuse when we're doing other research on these technologies and have a plan in place for what to do if we see that.
So the researchers have an agenda and we need to have a holistic development. What about the practitioners?
So practitioners are already doing a lot of work in this space. You know, they're making decisions about the ways technologies look and what technologies belong in a space. So they just need to be alert to the possibilities of abuse when they're making those decisions. Possibly by working with victim survivor advocacy groups would be one way that they could really consider what to do there.
So is there anything we can be doing right now to limit abuse?
Yeah, we need to stop pitting digital and analog against each other. So, for example, you shouldn't have to tape over the light switches to make Alexa control your lights because that sets up a conflict situation. We also need to make privacy defaults privacy preserving, even between individuals within a home, so that it looks weird if someone has set something up so that they get lots of information about someone else in the home. That looking weird all on its own will be a bit of an inhibitor, but it also means that if, for example, something comes to the family courts, there's evidence that something privacy invasive has been done. We need to be alert as researchers, practitioners, designers to the possibility of abuse when we're doing research and have a plan in place for what we do if we see something like this.
So almost a, heads up, you're starting to look a little bit like you're not sharing. Right. So what are our future research directions?
Well, I can see a couple. Working with perpetrators is one. There hasn't been much work done in that space. And expanding this thinking to other types of relationships, parent-child relationships and relationships with older adults are also places where this kind of abuse can happen. Also understanding what the social norms are so that we know what's weird and outside the norm. What do you think, Charlynn? What are your future research directions?
Look, one area I'm really interested in is looking at potentially abusive partners and why they're compelled or compulsive about this kind of behavior, but also looking at the intersection of aging and how aging might actually be beneficial to all of this in terms of the smart home devices and older people. What do you think we should be looking at?
Well, maybe we should ask our audience. What do you think? We're open for discussion at the end of this talk.